his speciality is development of rehabilitation services. He tells me it's one of the fourth system that he's developed, and I think he has a lot of calls for us in Mauritius to actually learn from. So we're looking forward to your lecture.
Thank you. Right. So I'll have to stay close to this thing, right?
Unless you want to hold the microphone.
Yeah, that's
You walk around.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, to Neuram and Amber to have invited me and including this topic here in this forum. Now, when you've learned all about your bladder management and spasticity management and management of or prevention of the pressure ulcers and whatever, there is a place you want to practice all that. And that is where the baseline is. So we're going to talk about the neurorehabilitation service development. So, it's not working? Right. So we have got no disclosure, I'm not getting paid to do what I'm doing. I like it to do it for my own fun. I enjoy it. So what are the objectives about it? What we're going to do is to develop a concept of neurorehabilitation service development that may lead to a model unit. And I put that model unit in italics and inverted commas. What is a model unit? That should be based upon best practice, evidence-based available, efficiency, cost effectiveness, deliverables, and population and environmental appropriateness. So that's the important component of what we are going to talk about today. So why am I talking about this topic? I've been sort of dealing with this stuff over 20 years. I'm betraying my age on this game. I'm chair of the Service Development Special Interest Group of World Federation of Neurorehabilitation, and I produced a paper on neurorehabilitation services. Have experience in establishing services both in public and private sector, and negotiated state funding, private sector funding, and insurance contracts for rehabilitation. And that's where I think the main issue lies, how you negotiate your way through this quagmire of bureaucrats who wind you around your little finger. So that's the important thing. So a very similar scenario to what exists in Mauritius at the moment, because Amber's sort of discussions with him in Mumbai and thereafter since I've come here, it appears that there is a very little structure for rehabilitation in Mauritius. When I say that, I'm not saying that there don't exist physical therapists, there don't exist occupational therapists, but there isn't a structure within which they can practice to the best of their clinical efficiency and effectiveness. So when I landed in July 2017 in Abu Dhabi, I found that I was the only physician that was calling for rehabilitation. I was called a physiotherapist. I didn't take that as a personal insult at all. I like my physiotherapy colleagues. Sorry about that. So every time I used to say that, and then the Americans haven't helped the situation at all by calling the rehab physicians physiatrists. So every time an American would come across, so I'll say I'm a physical medicine and rehab doctor, so you're a physiatrist. And that went around and they became physiatrist, physiotherapy, what's the difference? So it was quite a good fun for the first few months to try and explain what I actually do. There was no funding structure for rehabilitation. So for example, there was no inpatient rehabilitation paid for. There were no inpatient rehab beds. This was not a recognized specialty, as you can see. And only one PMNR doctor, not one, that means he is missing. I was the only doctor there in the whole of the Emirates of Abu Dhabi. And there was another one in Dubai who was of Soviet Bosnian background. So there were two of us and we hadn't met for a while. So he was doing things in silos, fighting his own business, and we were doing things in silos in Abu Dhabi. And the only thing that was funded under rehabilitation umbrella, so as to say, were 8 physiotherapy sessions as outpatients. So yes, there was a very well-equipped physiotherapy team, very well-equipped occupational therapy team who treated patients, inpatients in all over the hospitals, but there wasn't the structures. So when I started, I was given 5 beds in a non-stay unit. that this is where you can treat your rehab patients. And rehab was referred to as a specialty that happened after all was exhausted. So when they could not discharge the patient could not move out of a bed, there was nothing else they could do, they would think of it. I had never seen so many tracheostomy tubes in my life as I saw in Abu Dhabi. To move patients out of ICU, every third patient, if not every second, was tracheostomized. So, and then they would leave these patients on size 8 tracheostomy tubes with free-flowing oxygen, with humidifiers, and no questions asked, and then they would say they are tube dependent. So this was the situation I landed in. I'm not going to go through the whole business of what we fought with. But in 2018, if you look at Abu Dhabi, we have nearly 400 inpatient rehabilitation beds, okay, both spread across private and public sector. We have good funding structure in place with agreed tariffs. So a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, a speech therapist get good tariffs. PTs are cheapest. Speech therapists are getting the most. I don't know why. I don't know. But they get the most. They get 700 dirhams, whereas the speech therapist, physical therapists get 250, 300 dirhams. So, so there is a big change there. Or there are, PMNR is a recognized specialty. And here we have 12 consultants in physical medicine rehab, in just in Emirates of Abu Dhabi. 5 of them UK trained. We poached them, one from Sheffield. So, things have developed so rapidly just because we showed the utility of what we can do. And that is the important thing. Outpatient therapy is all paid for, and there are now home-based rehabilitation as well. So we have come a long way from being a nothing rehab service to a service which now flows right from the acute end to the community. So how did we do that? Now, in doing that, I think people need to educate themselves in actual standards. They are very important. This is the most important. This was the thing that I took to the table when I discussed with the funders, with the developers of the service. So core standards that are vital for the service to achieve the minimally implementable, meaning should not fall below a certain level. You say you're going to give a patient 45 minutes of physical therapy daily after a stroke. You need to put that in practice, right? So you should have a service capacity to be able to deliver that. It should be affordable. Don't go around asking for tons of money, right? Ensure effective delivery of services. It should be sustainable. Most important is sustainability. And backed up by evidence, you need to provide the evidence for what you're talking about, and police through standardized outcome analysis. And you need to continue to show that what you do works, and how important it is what you're providing to the healthcare sector. This is the important thing. And you need to show overall saving that rehabilitation actually brings to the healthcare sector. And that's the most very important component. So what did we do? We amassed a lot of evidence for these discussions. There are tons of work that has been done, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel. So I know I'm going to show the paper that he did wonderfully well in 2012. I went through it. It's a fantastic paper. But there are several practice guidelines out there from which we didn't have to write our own. So you've got Royal College of Physicians United Kingdom 2011 guidelines that in partnership with British Society of Rehabilitation Medicine, which sets out the basic rehabilitation structure. But then British Society of Rehabilitation Medicine has also produced a service guidelines in its own entirety for neurorehabilitation. So that's another appendix that is attached to it. Australian Society of Rehabilitation Medicine guidelines are wonderful. I would I urge you to actually look at that. They are really good. They define to the core the number of physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapy input. So it is an important document as far as I'm concerned. I learned a lot from this. Then disease-specific guidelines like clearinghouse guidelines and National Institute of Clinical Excellence guidelines. There are multiple sclerosis guidelines out there. There is stroke guidelines out there. There are spinal cord injury guidelines out there. So you can actually pick up each disease, condition in neuro rehab and work out what is it that is recommended in a developed healthcare system. Then we've got a wonderful resource in American Association of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. It's a wonderful association to be associated with. Don't mind this American, it's actually wonderful. They produce some wonderful documents about patient management guidelines, like ultrasound, who requires ultrasound, who doesn't require ultrasound, MRI. They actually go into a very core of the medical practice. And then there is something that I got involved in from the very earlier on. I don't know how many of you are familiar with CARF, right? So Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities. We have now 2 CARF accredited facilities in Abu Dhabi. Okay, 2, Amman and Cambridge. And I was involved in Cambridge accreditation. And I was also involved in JCI accreditation of Cambridge Medical and Rehabilitation. So we actually went through with the accreditation process. And I would urge you to look at the accreditation guidelines for CARF. Even if you're not going for the accreditation, you look at their guidelines. They have stroke guidelines. I believe they have got spinal cord injury guidelines. They have brain injury guidelines. So you can actually look at what they're proposing and what is their recommendation for it. So we trolled all through and we gathered evidence. These folks have done. As we speak, we are producing a book from World Federation of Neuro Rehab on stroke, and I'm doing the chapter on the service structuring in stroke for rehabilitation. And I have referenced all these things in there. So, what is most important is to define the need. This is the most important component. People go out with a very good idea, saying we're going to set up a rehab service. Okay, you're going to set up a rehab service, but within your community, how many strokes happen per year? Within the community, what existing number of spinal cord injury patients there are and what there might be in a year's time. So year-on-year percentage increase you need to look at. So incidence of stroke, hemorrhagic ischemic in Mauritius, you need to work this one out. I looked in Amber's document that I will actually show up, and I would urge you to go back and look at the guide. It's done tremendous amount of work in 2012. But 5 years, 6 years down the line, unfortunately, it hasn't come to the sort of light that it should have done. So, incidence of brain injury, spinal cord injury in Mauritius, people have to start working on those things to actually gather the real figures. Other demands on neuro rehabilitation, Guillain-Barré, multiple sclerosis, intracranial infections, tumors, muscular dystrophies, all these have to be worked out as to what number of patients we will. It's a small community, it's only 1.3 million people. It shouldn't be a task difficult to actually get that data together, get that registry together. So how do you do that? You develop a registry. Okay. Now people say that developing a registry is a very complex thing. Yes, it can be very complex. You know, if you want to go right to the core of it, it is very complex. But if you just need a kind of straightforward, simple data, you can just look at 5 to 10 years previous years records of each hospital and work out from there how many strokes were admitted, how many spinal cord injuries were admitted, how many brain injuries were admitted. And you can just send a questionnaire around and checking it out. And if you find one researcher who can go around from hospital to hospital trying to accumulate the data, within about a year you should have that kind of data available. It's not that a complex task. Then it needs to be a low-cost effort. You know, people spend a lot of time doing the basics, and then once they come to the real thing, they're told exhausted with money and effort. So you don't spend a lot of time, but you just need to get a researcher who can just do a simple, straightforward data gathering exercise. Then you can find out what is happening in the current year, and looking at the trends of the last 5-10 years, you can then anticipate year-on-year percentage change you can work out. Okay, it's a very simple, straightforward protocol. And some data is available for stroke now. I'll show you World Health Organization. This is a screenshot from Mauritius. Okay, so you've got, unfortunately, some mortality data, not actual data, but you can extrapolate what might be if you know the mortality roughly. So at the moment, you see in the 2017, 773 deaths, which is about 8.72% per 100,000 population. But we couldn't find anything for spinal cord injury. I didn't work through that. Once you've done that, you're doing that one thing, then you've got another thing to do at the same time. You need to begin to work out what resource that you have available locally. Okay? So you're going to see what number of physicians, PTs, OTs, SLPs, and nurses and neuropsychologists there are at the current time in Mauritius. Okay? That should be a very simple exercise. It shouldn't be that complex. You look at where is some sort of, what number of physical therapists are working in A hospital, B hospital, C hospital, and what space is available to them. This is what I did in Abu Dhabi. I didn't go out asking for a new build at all. That's the last thing you want. As soon as you ask for new monies, things become difficult. You need to start working with the money that is already in the system. This is the important thing. Realign that money the way you use it. And this is what basically we did. We just reorganized the way things work. And we didn't ask for any money, and things started to work themselves through the system. So look at what space is being available, identify the better ones, and say, right, these are the places where we're going to start working from. Okay? So you've got 5 physical therapists working, 2 occupational therapists working, 1 speech therapist working in hospital X. That's the place, as against where there's 1 physical therapist and no space to work on. So you can target that area where you can go and start developing the service from there. You look at the equipment needs. Important, high technology is not the base, be all and end all of rehabilitation. If you don't have robots, we still don't have robots in New Abu Dhabi. We call our physical therapists still physical therapists. We don't have locomats, right? I don't believe in it. So we are doing wonderful jobs, right? High cost, value, money. Yes, you can live for it, but that should be a dream ahead, not dream at the point of start. So how do you plan? Review what is currently available. We've already said that. Conduct service audits. We've already said that. This was helped to avoid duplication. What was the problem? That within the 10 kilometers, there were 2 people doing the same thing. So, and this is the problem with the private sector model. This is now happening in Abu Dhabi. Because it's profitable, people are doing the same things 10 kilometers apart. So avoid duplication. Avoid repeating the mistakes that people have made already. So look at Britain's model, look at Australian model, see what they have moved away from. There is no point starting it from the point where they've actually moved away from. Those are the developed services, right? And work closely with regulatory authorities for appropriate regulation. So you've got to get regulation right. The health services or the licensing body in Mauritius should start licensing people appropriately. This was the biggest gain that we made in Abu Dhabi, right? When I went physical medicine and rehab, doctors could not use botulinum toxin. We were not given the privilege. It took us 18 months of discussing with health authority that we are just as good at using it, if not better than neurologists to use it for spasticity. And we got through that. Now I can actually prescribe baclofen pump insertions. Ask neurosurgeons to insert them, and they don't reject the mitotoxins. There was a time they would not accept botulinum toxin. So we have moved tons, but this is with the regulating authority, educating them what you're able to do, what are your scopes, practices, and how the licensing should work. You need to create tiers of practice. The physical therapist can educate you the level 1, level 2, whatever, PT1 and PT2 levels, and how the training should come through. And should encourage the regulating authority to start training people locally. This is the biggest problem. The speech therapist, occupational therapist, physical therapist should be trained locally. Physicians should be trained. There should be a residency program in physical medicine. There's one problem in South Africa. They don't have a residency program in PMNR. So that is something that on Africa, pan-Africa level, we need to develop this. We've been discussing in the World Federation of Neuro Rehab. They're fighting to get the World Congress in Cape Town for 2022. And one of the problems is they don't have physiatry, they don't have rehab medicine. So we need to develop a local structure of training the physicians to do rehabilitation medicine. This is the important thing. At the moment, in this area, the rehab is practiced by several different physicians: neurologists, orthopedic doctors, rheumatologists, but there isn't a physiatrist, physical medicine doctor. So I think that needs to happen somehow in Mauritius with the links that it has with French and the British soil to start importing that kind of formal training for the physicians as well. Okay. And then the biggest important thing is to identify funding structures. Because what fails rehab in public sector is the continuous squeeze on the budget. What makes rehab difficult to practice in private sector is continuous demand for more money. They make money. So the identify funding sources and be very, very careful as to how you utilize that and how that sustainability, financial sustainability is maintained. So this is the paper I was referring to, and how many of you know this paper in Mauritius? This is from the Mauritius crowd. Raise your hands who have read this paper. You're from Mauritius?
Well, that's when I'm working at.
Okay. Anybody else who's read this paper? So this is the paper that AMBA did in 2012 with Mauritius Research Council. And I urge you to read it. I went through it, and it is a fantastic piece of work. You know, if people would have read it at the time that it was done, you wouldn't be having this discussion today at home and acted upon it. It has a great set of recommendations. It's a tons of work out there. We did a lot of surveys, you got your epidemiology in it and the data, and it's just sitting there. So I would say that somebody has to pick up this work for 2017 and pull it forward, take it forward to realize the data for today or this year. You don't have to reinvent the whole thing. It's just a small amount of work that you have to do on top of it. The hard work has already been done. And you can take this recommendation, evolve the recommendation in this paper and take back to the work. So I just put the reason for this reason to see how many people were aware of this. Okay? Sorry, Anna?
That's fine.
Okay. Alright. So then we go to planning. Calculate the number of beds required for inpatient post-acute rehabilitation. Okay, plan on adequate throughput parameters. Don't hold on to the patients. This is the most important component. You should I set myself an average stay of about 8 weeks for a patient, for inpatient rehab. And if that exceeds, then we need to go and look at it, what are the reasons that it has exceeded. I'm not saying you discharge everybody in 8 weeks, but I'm saying that's a bar. You can set it at 12 weeks, given your local structures. But you need to set yourself a practice parameter that this is my cutoff point. Otherwise, you never ask yourself a question why this patient's with me for so long. Okay. So there should be a clear throughput so there's no clogging of beds. The only reason you become difficulty with bed is because you're not pushing the patient to the system quick enough. Okay. Rehabilitation is not an inpatient game. Rehabilitation is a community game. The need for rehab is to get patient back into the community, not to keep them in hospital. That's the philosophy you should work with. Now, one of the things that is a separate topic to talk about, which minimizes or reduces the length of stay, is the next point. Work with acute care to integrate rehabilitation elements in intensive and acute care stage. This is a very important one. Most of our length of stay is increased in ICU. A patient who is not mobilized out of bed beyond 48 hours is adding at least hours, if not days, in hospitals. If a patient is not moved out of bed after 48 hours, it adds to length of stay. You can go out and look at the literature. This is available there now. Okay? There is a group that Needham runs, and I would urge you to look at it, from Johns Hopkins. It's called ICU Rehab Group, Intensive Care Unit Rehabilitation Group. And they produce tons of papers now about how important it is to mobilize patients. Patients who are paralyzed can be mobilized. Patients who are ventilated can be mobilized. So there is no need anymore for a person to be stuck in bed. Okay? So talk to your intensive care colleagues. Try to minimize early insertions of PEG tubes. There is a lot of data out there that early insertion of PEG tube increases the length of stay in hospital. We don't know why, but it increases morbidity. So I live with about 3 weeks of NG then to put a PEG tube in a patient who can recover swallow. You need to be very alert to who can recover swallow. Those who can recover swallow, don't put the PEG thing. All right? Not too early. Move the catheters out. Take the catheters out early. These are the things that are going to give them infections. Infections will increase length of stay. This is all. Don't give them too much oxygen. Don't make the bodies lazy. These are reciprocal things that actually add on to a person's stay in hospital. Nobody asks a question when they go on their rounds, somebody with a tracheostomy tube of size 8 with 5 liters of oxygen blowing in. Is this guy ever going to be able to breathe on his own if he continue to do this for another week? Because there's no respiratory effort. Very minimal respiratory effort is required to maintain oxygen saturation, making the muscles weak. Okay? So this is all happening in the country. That's why you got to go and talk to your acute care colleagues about these things very early and start influencing them. I told you that when we arrived in Abu Dhabi, every third patient had tracheostomy tube. We developed a tracheostomy decannulation protocol, and we decannulated tons of patients. Absolutely tons. All right? And it's not a problem anymore. So this is an important thing. Plan exit strategies to facilitate fluency in patient journey through the service. Always develop your episodes of rehab, ICU rehab, acute rehab, post-acute rehab, home-based or outpatient rehab, and back to vocational rehab and back to higher level. So plan those episodes very carefully, and you should be aiming for those from the very start. I had a patient earlier, they were talking about it, came in with a stroke, thrombectomy done, patient improved. She's a teacher and said we're discharging. The neurologist said he's discharging the patient. I said, have you done biocognitive testings? And he said, what for? I said, she's a teacher. She might have higher level language problem. We've got to assess now and then in 3 months' time to see what time she's going to return to work. So we've got to be thinking further ahead, very, very far ahead, to make sure that the patients return to their good potential, okay? And develop a community-wide plan, not facility-based plans. Where it actually becomes a problem, where hospital A thinks, this is my territory, nobody else is going to enter into it. And they don't talk to hospital B that might have a urodynamic service, and they are holding a spinal cord injury patient, and hospital A will never refer the patient to hospital B to get the urodynamics done, and the patient is languishing with a catheter. These things should not happen. There should be a right structuring of a patient going through the services and getting the right input at the right time. Right, this is the important bits. These are the do nots. Do not start if you have doubts about any aspect of vital elements of service development. Having no service is better than having a bad service. Okay, because bad service gives a bad name to the specialty. And if the patient says, oh, we don't want to go there, we get pressure sores there, there's a bad, don't do it. It's better to say, I can't do it, than say, I can do it better. Okay, so it hurts, but stand your ground strongly. All right? So the 3 important components that will be limiting you in the service development is funding, money, that plays the flute everywhere. So, you know, you've got to work out how your money is going to happen. Not the money just for the establishing the service and hiring the workforce. Money to run it for at least 1 year, if not more, without a return of profit. If you're a private sector, or tell the public sector, don't look at us for 1 year at least with this money for outcomes. Okay? So important that you have a reserve fund that will allow them processes to run smoothly for at least one. So you have a capital sum for the service development, and then you have money for running costs, your electricity bills, your water bills, right? All those things have to be added on and written down on your spreadsheet and worked out what is your monthly outgoings and what is coming into your account. That's important. Human resource. Biggest problem is having trade staff. It's even bigger than money. Okay. So when I moved out from public sector into the private sector and established the first outpatient rehab service in private sector, we had so much difficulty getting two specialties: neuro-trained occupational therapists, and worse, neuro-trained Arabic-speaking speech therapists. It was like gold dust. You know, it was so difficult. So that resource is much more complex. It takes time to evolve one. You know, you can get the loan in 1 month after negotiating with the bank, but you can't get a locally trained speech therapist, a good level speech therapist who knows the neuro swallow assessments and everything in the local market for at least 7 years, 8 years. By the time they're properly trained. So this is the tough one. You need to work on that. And then you need to acquire supports in the community, government, and the local partners. Okay. So make sure that the development is phased. Don't start, I'm going to make a big hospital of 150 beds and on the first day it will work full blow. Okay. Do not start on unmanageable scales. Each phase should be designed to operate at completion. Okay. And progress incrementally. Always learn from your first phase the mistakes you have made to go to the next one. Go quiet, gradually, move up, steady, okay? And do not make the project top heavy. Put too much money in at front, and then about 3 months down the line, there's nothing in the kitty, and you're sitting on the bed, on the benches looking what the hell can be now. Alright? Steady input, steady investment, gradual build-up. Okay. Maintain resource, prevents neglect. This is a very important component. A lot of good idea services get ditched into neglect. People lose interest after a year if it's not working well, or people are like me, who developed the service, found better offer somewhere else, moved away. The passion that there was no longer exists, you know, and then the whole thing fizzles out. Good facility and equipment maintenance. How many of you gone into some of the hospitals and you see some of the exercise rusting away, exercise bikes and the old wheelchairs with the screws loose? It's not that they are not useful, it's because they are not being maintained. And every time you have a bad tire on a wheelchair, you don't need a new one. Right? And this is the important part. You need to be able to have good rehab and bioengineers attached to your services who maintain all your equipment. Right from the IT stuff to the. Now, what most services will do, that the human resources and finances will say our computers need to run efficiently for us to be able to work, but they will not provide you the money to keep your clinical equipment running efficiently in order for you to be able to work. You've got to fight your battles. Right? Maintain expertise. Don't lose out. important thing to imagine. When you start a service, for example, this is what my experience. We started a service, we accumulated tons of good therapists. We got therapists from England, from Ireland, from Australia, and once they were in the market, we found them just sitting out. Others were giving them, because we had done the whole hard work. We got them the licenses, we have paid their airfares to come over, and then the others providers started to pick them a higher salary. Okay, this is the important. You need to be aware of this, that you will have people leave you because others are giving them more. Okay, all right. So continue to respond to changing needs for the community and clientele and the services, and reflective self-analysis. Always look back at yourself and say, what am I doing wrong? Don't pat on yourself all the time. Always ask the question. When you're running a service, always ask the question, what is going wrong, rather than what is going right. Right is fine, but always look at what is not going right. Okay. So this is just few. Where is this? Very quickly, some photos I'm going to take you through now. I'm towards the end of this game now. Where is this rehab service? What do you think? Which country is this? Any guesses? No, it's not Abu Dhabi. Huh? No, not Australia. It's Brazil. Brazil has got something called SERA Network of Rehabilitation Facilities. Go to their website and see what they're doing. But I don't know. This is our service that we developed, Cambridge Medical and Rehab Center in Abu Dhabi. Looks very nice. We had the sort of relaxation room, we had the pools, we had the whole works there. So that's wonderful. Does it serve its purpose? I don't know. This is what is available nowadays, right? So you can spend a ton of money to get all sorts of stuff. Electronic walkers. Anybody know what that is? Arneo. At the top, or the top. Okay, that's the Arneo. This is the local mat. And then this is the brain-computer interface robotic arm that feeds you from the brain telling the robot how to manipulate the arm. Tons of money is required for this, all right? Is it useful? Do you need all this to develop a service? I don't know. Then you've got this paraplegic walker, exoskeleton. And then I take you to a service which I visited, and I was amazed what these guys have done. This is a paraplegic center in Hyderabad, Peshawar in Pakistan. One of the best. I think you've been there, have you?
We are going there for 3 years.
Right. Now, you can share the experience what those guys are doing from absolutely working, everything they're making themselves, are they not?
The first retail we made was from bicycle wheels in the local market.
Okay. So they are doing their own stuff, they're making their own things there. They have their own crutches they make their own AFOs and KFOs, and they have their local Peshawar athletics and stuff like that. And look at the Baba trying to win the game.
When did you visit them last?
2 years ago.
It's great, it's still carry on.
It is carrying on. It's carrying on. This Dr. Elias, sometime he presents a wonderful presentation. I attended his presentation. So that's that. And then there is one in Africa. This is a stroke rehab service. Okay. It says it's a physiotherapy services 8 to 5 p.m. and you can see it's not as well equipped. So we went right from SERA, local mats, Arneos, exoskeletons, a local services that has been developed from local expertise, and then a service that is providing a very basic rehab. So what is the best service one? This is the question. We don't know. This is the important thing, because we have not got evidence between that center in Peshawar and Princess Royal Spinal Cord Injury Center in Sheffield. We don't have a comparative trial to see which model works better. It is important to start looking at that. In the interest of cost and in the interest of that people, there are lots of centers in Bangladesh, in India, in Pakistan, where they've gone up, they're working at a very basic level, and they are producing results. People are using wheelchair, they're doing their self-transfers, they're doing their sports, the whole thing. What are we getting different? Okay, their pressure oxygen rates is very down. They don't get so much category. This is what, at least when they presented the data, it was amazing from Peshawar, that they don't get as many UTIs, they don't get stuff. So it's it's not such a, I wouldn't say it's a very basic, it's a relatively underdeveloped service, but they're producing results. As against somewhere and then there, where you've got locomotion, you've got exoskeleton and everything, but there's no comparative model to work out. So we have to do that somewhere to work out a sort of mixture of something in the middle. That will be probably the best model. So one that suits the needs is the best one. Should be affordable, of course, to the local funders and the local payers. Basic standards are adhered to. This is the most important component. You have to set out your KPIs, and that as a fraternity we should be able to do that. I know that PMNR, AAPMNR has set for their rehab services a 5-point KPI, CAR-Ts, catheter-associated infections, pressure ulcers, chest infection, those sort of things. I suppose we can pull out KPIs and say these are your basic KPIs that you have to follow. So we don't get negative impact of providing bad services. Do not look at the best, but align with the most optimized services. Should be sustainable, should be outcome and result focused. This is the most important thing, and should be client focused, not yet resource, but sensitive to the resource. You can't just go on spending money and say, oh, they're giving enough money. You've got to be resource sensitive. This person who's giving you the money is being good, but he can be nasty as well. Alright. So that we are. So this question answer, this is where this is the most expensive hospital ever built on earth. Okay, this is where I work. Do you guys provide any better rehabilitation services there? No, I just did the same in Khalifa Hospital, which is just about 2-3 kilometers away from me. So, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think that was very, very enlightening. I don't know, I'm going to first ask the Mauritians or the other Africans here. We need to really look at this and see how that goes. So, any questions from you guys? I think you've silenced me.
No, this is a question. Not everyone's solved.
Thank you, Dr. Weston, for sharing that. That was absolutely fantastic. I would just like to know from your experience, you said you started as an outpatient service? Rehab, yes, outpatient rehab, or was that inpatient?
We started as nothing. So basically, yes, we had an outpatient physiotherapy service, we had inpatient physiotherapy, OT and speech service. But what we didn't have is a coordinated rehabilitation service that was lacking. So yes, we had the basic structures there. All I had to do at that point was to bring those structures together. And we managed to do that within 6-8 months. But we didn't have any inpatient beds. We were given 6 beds in the long-term care unit. But we expanded from there to have 21-bed unit. That was the first inpatient unit. The whole ward was then given to us. And then we also started doing what we call ICU and floor work. So we used to do stroke rounds on the medical wards. The whole rehab team would go once a week picking up patients. I used to round regularly with neurosurgery to pick patients out of their hands quickly. So you really have to kind of do hard work to get patients out of wrong places in hospital. So for me, a patient in a neurosurgical bed beyond the point of 2 or 3 days, unless they have got neurosurgical complication, is a wasted patient because they will not. So they will not. They don't know what to. They say that. I'll give you an example of a patient that when I joined the Cleveland clinic, a neurosurgeon asked me to see a patient who had been there for about 320 days. After a resection of a tumor, he went into what they called a PPS. And they left him in bed and he had knee contractions and stuff. So I looked at the patient had typical Parkinsonian features and he was slow. I started him on a Amantadine and Cyanamide and he woke up. And we moved him out. and we sent him home after 3 months. And he's in a wheelchair, patient, he talks, he eats, we pulled out his nasogastric tube, we did all the rest of stuff, and the family is very happy. So, you know, the rehab, you need to show this your usefulness to them. Now they would refer the patient immediately to me because they don't want another patient sitting in hospital for 3 years. Look,